The cattle baron stood before the entire town, unfolded a sheet of paper with shaking hands, and said 7 words that made Savannah drop everything she was holding. A church bell echoed through Powder Ridge as rain rattled against the windows. Savannah froze halfway down the aisle, her fingers tightening around a worn leather satchel. At the front of the crowded church, Wyatt Boone stared at the page in his hands, his jaw locked, his breath caught. Then he began to read. 1 word, then another. Across the room, a lawyer suddenly went pale, and Savannah realized something was terribly wrong. If this story pulls you in, tell us where you're watching from. The noon sun hung over Powder Ridge like a hammer. Heat shimmered above the dirt street. Wagon wheels stood still. Even the horses tied outside Miller's general store seemed tired of moving. Work had stopped. People were gathering instead. Savannah Brooks stood near the steps of the land office, her hands folded in front of her. She wore a faded green dress, carefully mended at the cuffs. Dust clung to the hem. A stack of school papers rested under one arm. Across from her stood Owen Pierce, young, well-dressed, confident, too confident. "The file disappeared this morning," Owen announced loudly, "and Miss Brooks was the last person seen near the records room." Murmurs spread through the crowd. Someone shook their head. Someone else looked away. Savannah recognized many of them. Parents, neighbors, people whose children sat in her classroom every day. "I didn't take anything," she said. Her voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. Owen lifted his chin. "Then perhaps you can explain why you were asking questions about land records last week." Savannah knew exactly what he meant. A number hadn't matched. One figure written in a ledger differed from the copy stored at the school. She had mentioned it once. Only once. Now she wished she hadn't. A woman pulled her daughter closer. Another man muttered that teachers ought to stay out of business matters. The crowd began shifting. Not toward the truth. Toward the easiest answer. Sheriff Caleb Turner stood near the boardwalk, hat low over his eyes. He looked uncomfortable but said nothing. That silence hurt more than the accusations. By the time the church bell struck noon, several parents had already decided to remove their children from Stone Creek School. Savannah watched one little boy cling to his notebook before his father pulled him away. She looked down. Not because she was ashamed, because she didn't trust her voice. The wind pushed dust through the street. Then came the sound of hoofbeats. Slow, steady. Every head turned. A tall bay horse stopped near the crowd. Wyatt Boone swung down from the saddle. No hurry, no anger, just calm certainty. His hat cast a shadow across his weathered face as he looked from Owen to Savannah. "What happened?" he asked. Owen answered before anyone else could. "Missing land records." Wyatt glanced at Savannah. She met his eyes. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Wyatt looked back at the crowd. "The school may close," he said evenly, "but she won't sleep outside." Silence fell over the street. Even Owen seemed caught off guard. Wyatt adjusted his gloves. "If Miss Brooks needs a place to stay, she'll stay at Blackthorn Ranch." Nobody answered. Nobody challenged him. The only sound came from a loose sign creaking above the mercantile. Savannah stared at him. They barely knew each other. A greeting in town, a nod after church. Nothing more. Yet he stood there as if the decision had already been made. Owen's jaw tightened. "You don't even know if she's innocent." Wyatt's gaze never moved. "I didn't say I did." The words landed heavier than an argument. He walked to Savannah and took the school papers from her arm before the wind could scatter them. A small gesture. Nothing dramatic. Yet somehow it felt like the first kindness she'd received all day. The crowd parted. Not willingly, but it parted. Savannah took one last look at the schoolhouse at the far end of the road. The windows glowed beneath the Wyoming sun. Children's drawings still hung inside. She didn't know if she would ever walk through those doors again. Wyatt opened the wagon waiting beside the hitch rail. "Miss Brooks?" She looked at him. For the first time all day, someone had spoken her name instead of an accusation. Savannah climbed aboard. As the wagon rolled away from Powder Ridge, she stared at the distant mountains beyond the prairie. Behind her, whispers followed. Ahead of her waited Blackthorn Ranch, and a man whose reasons remained a mystery. The ride took nearly 2 hours. Powder Ridge disappeared behind rolling grasslands and low ridges brushed gold by the afternoon sun. The wagon followed a dirt road worn smooth by cattle drives and supply wagons. Here and there, fence posts stretched toward the distant foothills of the Bighorn Mountains. Neither Savannah nor Wyatt spoke much. Once he pointed toward a narrow creek winding through the valley. Silver Run. She followed his gaze. The water flashed silver beneath the sunlight before vanishing behind cottonwoods. Beautiful. Important. She didn't know yet how important. Blackthorn Ranch appeared shortly before sunset. A wide wooden gate stood between 2 stone pillars darkened by years of weather. Beyond it spread barns, corrals, bunkhouses, and fields dotted with grazing cattle. The place felt lived in, not grand, not polished, just strong. The wagon stopped in front of the main house. Before Savannah could climb down, the front door opened. A woman with gray hair pinned beneath a faded bonnet stepped onto the porch. She wiped her hands on her apron. "You must be Miss Brooks." Her voice carried the warmth of a kitchen fire. "Martha Reed." Savannah shook her hand. Martha looked at her for only a second before nodding toward the house. "Supper's nearly ready. No questions, no suspicion, no curiosity. Just welcome." It nearly broke Savannah's heart. Her room sat behind the kitchen. Small, clean, a narrow bed, a wash basin, a wooden chair beside the window. On the dresser rested a fresh towel and a bar of soap wrapped in brown paper. Someone had prepared for her arrival. That night, she ate beef stew, cornbread, and canned peaches with Martha at the kitchen table. Wyatt joined them briefly before excusing himself. "Business," he said. "Nothing unusual." Yet Martha's eyes followed him as he left. Later, while washing dishes, she spoke without looking up. "He's carried something heavy for a long time." Savannah glanced toward the dark hallway. "What kind of thing?" Martha smiled faintly. "The kind people hide." Then she said no more. Days passed. Savannah found work where she could. She helped sort receipts from the supply wagon, mended classroom books she had managed to bring with her, read stories aloud to 2 ranch hands who liked listening while repairing tack. Life settled into a strange peace. Until one night. The house had long gone quiet. A storm drifted across the valley. Rain tapped softly against the windows. Savannah woke thirsty and stepped into the hallway. A faint light glowed beneath the study door. She nearly walked past. Then she noticed something. The light remained there long after midnight. Curiosity slowed her steps. The door stood slightly open. Inside, Wyatt sat alone behind a desk. A single oil lamp burned beside him. His hat rested nearby. In his hands was a letter. The paper looked old, creased from years of handling. He stared at it. Not reading, not writing, just staring. Minutes passed. Nothing changed. Finally, he folded it and placed it back inside a drawer. Only then did he notice her reflection in the window glass. For a brief moment, something crossed his face. Embarrassment, sharp and unexpected. "I didn't mean to wake anyone," he said. "You didn't." Silence stretched between them. Neither moved. Neither looked away. Then Savannah's eyes drifted toward the drawer, toward the letter, toward the truth she suddenly understood. The realization came quietly, like dawn arriving before anyone noticed. Wyatt Boone could not read. The next morning neither mentioned it, nor the morning after. But once she saw it, she could not stop seeing it. The way he avoided written notices, the way he handed invoices directly to foremen, the way he signed papers quickly without looking at more than the final line. One evening she found him standing beside a feed shipment. A manifest lay open on a crate. His jaw tightened slightly as he stared at the page. Savannah walked over. "The total's wrong." He looked up. She pointed. "They charged you twice for the harness leather." His eyes shifted back to the paper. A long moment passed. Then he let out a slow breath. "I wondered why the numbers seemed high. You couldn't read it. It wasn't a question." Wyatt looked toward the corrals, toward the fading light. Anywhere except her. Finally he nodded. "Once." The admission seemed harder than any confession. "I was 12 when my father died." His voice remained calm. "Needed to work. Didn't stay in school." Savannah waited. "No one knows?" "Martha." Another pause. "Now you." The wind moved softly through the cottonwoods. Savannah folded the invoice. "You built all this anyway." His laugh carried no humor. "Built it while hoping nobody ever noticed." She studied him. This man owned thousands of acres, hundreds of cattle. Men listened when he spoke, yet one sheet of paper could still make him feel small. "You don't have to keep hiding." Wyatt met her eyes. For the first time she saw uncertainty there. Not weakness, just uncertainty. "What would you suggest?" Savannah smiled slightly. A real smile. "The first one since arriving. I suggest we start with the alphabet." Something almost resembling amusement appeared at the corner of his mouth. "I'm 38. And stubborn." Martha later claimed she heard both of them laugh from the porch. The lessons began 3 nights later. Secret, quiet, after supper. A, B, C. Simple words, cattle brands, supply labels, names painted on feed sacks. Wyatt learned slowly, carefully, refusing shortcuts. One evening he spent 20 minutes sounding out the word ledger. When he finally succeeded, Savannah looked away to hide her smile. Outside, the wind rolled across the Wyoming prairie. Inside, something else was beginning. Not romance, not yet. Trust. And neither of them understood where it might lead. 1 week later, while organizing contracts in the study, Savannah noticed something strange. 3 separate land agreements. Different years. Different dates. The same signature. The same attorney. Gideon Pierce. She read the first page, then the second. Her expression changed. Certain numbers didn't belong there. Certain clauses made no sense. Slowly she looked toward the ranch window, toward the dark line of Silver Run winding through the valley. A cold feeling settled in her chest. Something was wrong. Very wrong. And she suspected Wyatt Boone had signed it without ever knowing what it truly said. Savannah did not sleep much that night. The contracts lay on the study desk beneath the yellow light of the oil lamp. Outside, the wind moved over Blackthorn Ranch in long, low breaths, shaking the cottonwood leaves near the window. She read each page again, then again. The words were polite, legal, carefully dressed, but underneath them something was being stolen. At dawn, Wyatt found her still there. A cold cup of coffee sat untouched beside her elbow. Her eyes were tired, but her hand was steady when she turned the papers toward him. "You need to see this." Wyatt stood beside the desk. He did not sit. Savannah pointed to one line near the bottom of the second agreement. This clause gives Gideon Pierce first claim over grazing access along Silver Run if payment is delayed by more than 30 days. Wyatt's face did not change, but his thumb pressed hard against the edge of the desk. I never borrowed from Gideon. No, Savannah said quietly, but this paper says you did. The room went still. From the kitchen came the faint clink of Martha setting cups on the table. A rooster called once near the barn, then stopped, as if the morning itself had paused. Savannah opened another contract. This one changes the boundary marker near the east pasture, and this one lists your water rights as temporary. Wyatt stared at the pages, not at the words, at the marks he had made at the bottom. His own name. Written strong and clean, used against him. For the first time since she had known him, Wyatt Boone looked older than 38. I signed those, he said. Savannah did not answer too fast. Yes. His jaw tightened. I asked Gideon what they were. I believe you. He said they were renewal forms, routine filings. Savannah folded her hands on the desk so they would not tremble. They are not routine. Wyatt turned away and looked out the window toward Silver Run. The river curved through the valley like a narrow blade of light. Cattle moved near its bank, slow and dark against the grass. If Silver Run goes, he said, Blackthorn goes with it. Savannah watched his shoulders rise once, then settle. He did not curse. He did not slam his fist. That restraint made the room feel smaller. By noon, they had pulled every document from Wyatt's iron strongbox. Receipts from the feed store, tax notices, survey maps, land office copies tied with blue string. Martha brought biscuits and ham, then left without asking why the study floor had vanished beneath paper. Savannah read until her throat grew dry. Wyatt listened. Sometimes he asked her to repeat a sentence. Sometimes he walked to the window and back. Once, when she stumbled over a smudged line, he poured water into a tin cup and set it near her hand. No speech. Just the cup, she noticed. So did he. Near sunset, she found the first clean thread. A land file number, written at the top of an old survey. The same number Owen Pierce had shouted about in town. Savannah went still. Wyatt saw it. What is it? She lifted the paper. This file matches the one they accused me of stealing. He stepped closer. The missing one? Yes. Her voice dropped. And if this copy is correct, the missing file may prove Silver Run was never Gideon's to touch. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Then Wyatt reached for his hat. Where are you going? To Powder Ridge. Savannah stood quickly. No. He stopped at the door. They put this on you, and if you ride in angry, Gideon will be ready for you. Wyatt looked back at her. The last light of day cut across his face, showing dust at his collar and the tired lines around his eyes. Savannah softened her voice. We need proof, not pride. Something in him shifted then. Not surrender. Trust. He took his hand off the door latch. All right. That evening, they stood by the corral as the sky turned copper behind the bighorns. A ranch hand led a lame horse across the yard. Somewhere near the bunkhouse, men laughed over supper, unaware of the trouble gathering around the place that fed them. Wyatt leaned against the fence. I hated letters all my life, he said. Never thought they could hate me back. Savannah looked at him. They don't hate you. He gave a small, tired smile. No? No. Men use them that way. The wind lifted a strand of hair across her cheek. She reached to move it, but Wyatt did first, then stopped before his fingers touched her. His hand hovered there, a moment too long. Then he lowered it. Sorry. Savannah looked down at the rail between them. You didn't do anything wrong. His eyes stayed on the river beyond the pasture. Still. That one word carried more care than most men put into a promise. The next morning, Savannah began a list. Names, dates, receipts, file numbers. Wyatt sat across from her, sounding out words from an old cattle bill while she worked. Territory, he read slowly. She looked up. That's right. He exhaled through his nose, almost a laugh. Long word. Useful one. He nodded once and tried again. Outside, Silver Run kept moving through the valley, bright and quiet under the morning sun. But inside the study, the truth had begun to gather. Piece by piece, line by line, and somewhere in Powder Ridge, a missing file was waiting to tell them who had really stolen from whom. Savannah found the first clue in an old receipt from Miller's General Store. It was tucked inside a folded survey map, yellowed at the edges and soft from handling. The ink had faded, but the date was still clear. April 17th, 1883. 1 bottle of black ink, 2 ledger books, 1 packet of red sealing wax. Charged to Owen Pierce. Savannah held it near the window. Wyatt stood behind her, close enough that she could hear the leather of his gloves creak when his hand closed. Owen bought ledger books? That alone means nothing, she said. But her voice had changed. Martha Reed was the one who brought the second clue. She came into the study after supper, carrying a basket of clean towels against her hip. She paused at the door, looking at the papers spread across Wyatt's desk. I remember that spring, she said. Savannah looked up. Martha set the basket down. Gideon came here twice in 1 week. Said it was about renewing grazing permits. Wyatt signed papers both times. Wyatt's face tightened. Martha looked at him gently, then continued. Owen came with him the second time. Young man had mud on his boots. Red mud. Same kind they get near the land office cellar after rain. Savannah stopped breathing for a moment. The land office had a back cellar. Old records were stored there. Wyatt took his hat from the chair. This time Savannah did not stop him. They rode into Powder Ridge the next morning before the town was fully awake. Mist hung low over the street. A milk wagon rattled past the church. Smoke rose from the diner stove, carrying the smell of bacon and burnt coffee. Sheriff Caleb Turner was sweeping dust from the jailhouse steps when they arrived. He looked from Wyatt to Savannah, then to the folder in Savannah's hands. You found something, he said. Maybe? Savannah answered. Inside the sheriff's office, Caleb listened. He said little. But when Savannah laid the receipt beside the survey copy, he removed his hat and rubbed one hand across his face. I should have asked more questions that day, he muttered. Wyatt did not soften it for him. Yes. Caleb looked down. The word sat in the room like a weight. By noon, they had searched the land office cellar. The clerk protested until Wyatt simply stood in the doorway and said nothing. Dust lay thick on the shelves. Mice had chewed one corner of a tax roll. Savannah worked through boxes by year, her fingers gray with dirt. Then she found it. Not the missing file. A torn edge, a half-page caught behind a loose board near the back shelf. On it was part of a table. Numbers, boundary markers. Silver Run listed not as conditional access, but permanent water right. Savannah's hand trembled. Wyatt saw it. That's it? It's part of it. She turned the page over. On the back, in hurried pencil, someone had written a note. Destroy old copy before hearing. Below it was a mark. Not a signature. A habit. A small hooked P. She had seen it before. On Owen Pierce's notes to parents when he used to visit the schoolhouse. pretending to be friendly, lingering by her desk too long, asking questions she never welcomed. Savannah closed her eyes. Just once, then opened them. Owen took the file. Wyatt's voice lowered. On Gideon's order. From above, footsteps crossed the land office floor. Then came a voice they both knew. Smooth, careful. Gideon Pierce, I hear folks are troubling themselves over old paper. Savannah folded the torn page and placed it inside her book. When they stepped upstairs, Gideon stood near the front counter with Owen behind him. Owen looked at Savannah, then away too quickly. That was answer enough. Gideon smiled at Wyatt. There will be a town meeting tomorrow night at the church. We'll settle the Silver Run matter proper and legal. His eyes moved to Savannah. Best you stay away from matters beyond your station, Miss Brooks. Wyatt took one step forward. Savannah touched his sleeve. Barely. Just enough. He stopped. She looked at Gideon herself. I read what is put before me, Mr. Pierce. His smile thinned. Yes, he said. That has always been your trouble. The church was full the next evening. Lanterns burned along the walls. Men stood in the aisle because every pew had filled. Rain tapped against the windows, soft at first, then harder. Gideon called the meeting to order as if he already owned the room. He spoke of law, order, signed agreements. Wyatt sat near the front, still as fence wire. Savannah sat beside Martha. The torn page rested inside her Bible. Then Gideon held up the final agreement. This document bears Mr. Boone's own signature, he said. No man can deny what he signed. The room turned toward Wyatt. He rose slowly. For a moment, his hand rested on the back of the pew. Savannah saw the white in his knuckles. Then he looked at the people of Powder Ridge. His voice came rough, but steady enough. I can. A murmur passed through the church. Gideon frowned. Wyatt removed his hat. I signed what I was told to sign. His eyes moved once to Savannah, then back to the room. I did that because I could not read it. Silence struck harder than thunder. Rain slid down the window glass. Someone shifted in the back pew. No one laughed. No one spoke. Wyatt Boone, owner of Blackthorn, cattleman of the Northern Valley, stood before them with his secret laid bare. Gideon's face changed first, not into shock, into fear. Savannah stood then. The floorboard creaked beneath her shoe. She opened the Bible and took out the torn page. Her voice was quiet. But it reached every corner of that church. And now that the truth has been spoken, we can begin with the words Mr. Pierce hoped no one would read. Rain tapped against the church windows. No one moved. Savannah unfolded the torn page and laid it beside the contract Gideon had brought. The paper shook slightly in her hands. Not from fear, but from age. Silver Run River, she read. Permanent water access granted to Blackthorn Cattle Company under territorial survey, filed June 1882. A murmur swept through the room. Gideon stepped forward. That page is incomplete. So is your version, Savannah replied. She reached into her satchel and removed another document. The receipt. The survey copy. The notes she had gathered during long evenings at Wyatt's desk. One by one, she placed them before Sheriff Caleb Turner. The sheriff read silently. His eyes narrowed. Then he looked at Owen Pierce. Owen. The young man stared at the floor. Owen. This time the sheriff's voice carried across the church. The silence broke, like a dam giving way. Owen swallowed. His father turned toward him. For the first time that evening, Gideon looked uncertain. I only did what he told me, Owen said. Nobody spoke. The rain seemed louder. I took the file from the land office cellar. A woman near the back gasped softly. Owen rubbed both hands together. I was supposed to destroy it. Gideon's face went pale. Enough, he snapped. But it was already too late. Owen looked exhausted, like a man carrying a sack of stones he could no longer lift. She saw the numbers were wrong, he said, glancing toward Savannah. Father said if people believed she stole the file, nobody would listen to her. The church grew still again. Sheriff Caleb slowly removed his glasses. Then he folded the documents together. That's enough for me. Gideon opened his mouth. Caleb raised a hand. No, the single word ended the argument. The sheriff stepped beside him. You'll come with me. No struggle followed. No shouting. Only the quiet collapse of a man whose lies had finally run out of places to hide. The church doors opened. Cold air drifted inside. Moments later, Gideon Pierce disappeared into the rainy evening. For several seconds, nobody moved. Then every eye turned toward Savannah. The same town that had doubted her. The same town that had closed doors. Now silent. Waiting. Savannah said nothing. She had not come for revenge. Only truth. Then Wyatt Boone rose. The room shifted again. Everyone knew what he had confessed. Everyone knew what it had cost him. He reached into his coat pocket and unfolded a small sheet of paper. The page looked worn from use, folded and unfolded 100 times. His hand trembled slightly. Savannah recognized it immediately. One of the practice pages, the one she had helped him read. Wyatt cleared his throat. The church became so quiet that the rain sounded like pebbles against the roof. He looked down. Then began, silver. Run belongs to the people who built their lives beside it. The words came slowly, carefully, each one earned. Nobody laughed. Nobody looked away. Some lowered their eyes. Others nodded. Savannah felt her throat tighten. Not because he was reading, because he kept going. A year ago, he would have hidden. Months ago, he would have handed the page to someone else. Now he stood alone before the entire town, reading his own words. When he finished, the silence lingered. Then Martha Reed began to clap. One slow clap, then another. Soon others joined her. Not loud, not dramatic, just honest. Wyatt looked down, embarrassed. Savannah smiled, the kind of smile that arrives quietly and stays. Months passed. Winter melted into spring. The grass returned along Silver Run. A new schoolhouse rose beside the river. Nothing fancy. White paint, 3 windows, a bell above the door. Children arrived from neighboring ranches carrying slates beneath their arms. Savannah became its teacher, then its principal. Every morning, Wyatt delivered firewood before lessons began. Every afternoon, he repaired something, whether it needed repairing or not. A loose hinge, a step, a fence post. The children pretended not to notice that he always found reasons to be nearby. One October afternoon, cottonwood leaves drifted across the schoolyard. Classes had ended. Savannah sat alone at her desk, grading papers. A shadow appeared in the doorway. Wyatt, hat in hand, looking more nervous than he had inside the church. I have something for you. He handed her an envelope. Plain, folded carefully. No lawyer, no clerk, no helper. Only him. Savannah opened it. The handwriting was uneven. Some letters leaned, others stood too tall, but every word was clear. She read slowly. You taught me to read the words written on paper. I only hope I can spend the rest of my life teaching you that love does not always end in hurt. The room blurred. Not because of the letter, because she knew how many evenings had gone into it, how many mistakes, how many attempts, how many quiet hours beside a lamp. She looked up. Wyatt shifted awkwardly. "Well?" Savannah stood, folded the letter carefully, then held it against her heart. "It's beautiful." Relief crossed his face. Real relief. The kind a man cannot hide. They married the following spring beneath a clear Wyoming sky. Martha Reed cried openly. Sheriff Caleb attended in his best coat. The school children covered the church steps with wildflowers gathered from the hills. Years later, visitors passing through Powder Ridge still stopped beside Silver Run. They saw Blackthorn Ranch. They saw the school. They saw children running between the two. And inside Savannah's office, resting safely in the top drawer of her desk, remained the first letter Wyatt Boone ever wrote. The paper had yellowed. The folds had softened. But she kept it. Because some people fall in love through grand speeches, others through promises. She fell in love through a page of imperfect handwriting, a page written by a man who had once hidden from letters, and who learned, one word at a time, how to tell her exactly what was in his heart. And maybe that's why this story stays with us long after the last page is turned. Because if we're honest, most of us have carried something we hoped nobody would see. A fear, a mistake, a wound, a part of ourselves we quietly hid from the world, believing it made us less worthy of being loved. Imagine standing where Savannah once stood, watching doors close, hearing people decide who you are before they know your story. Or imagine being Wyatt, carrying a secret so long that it becomes part of the way you walk through life. And then imagine meeting the one person who doesn't laugh, doesn't turn away, doesn't ask you to be someone else, just someone who stays. That may be the real heart of this story. Not the ranch, not the river, not even the letter. It's the reminder that healing often begins when one person chooses patience over judgment. That love isn't found in perfection, it's found in trust. In second chances, in the quiet courage of letting someone see who you really are. If this story touched you, I'd love to hear from you. What part stayed with you the most? And if you enjoy stories about resilience, redemption, unexpected love, and the people who help us find our way home, I hope you'll stay a while. There are many more journeys waiting just beyond the next trail, and I'd be honored to share them with you.